Daily Debate. It's a nice show. We're going to be celebrating the Eid al-Adha, the feast of sacrifice that is for throughout the whole Arab region and the entire Muslim world. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a feast where we are celebrating sacrifices. We are also celebrating forgiveness and tolerance and love. And joining us here in the studio to shed more light on the aspects of the celebrations and the history of Eid al-Adha is Dr. محمد عبدالحليم, the political analyst. Dr. Abdulhalim, thank you very much for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, before our best wishes, let's check out this report regarding the Egyptian celebrations of the Feast of Sacrifice, or Eid al-Adha, and we'll be right back.
The Muslim festival of Eid al-Adha, which commemorates the end of the annual Hajj pilgrimage. In the capital Cairo, families flock to mosques and squares to perform the festival prayers. Egypt's Muslims celebrate Eid al-Adha on Friday, starting with Eid prayers, following by the ritual of sacrificing an animal. Several mosques all over the country have a long and familiar reputation in hosting the Eid prayers. Traditionally, buying new clothes for children and sweets to serve visiting relatives are regular habits to mark the four-day occasion. Despite financial difficulties to enjoy the festivity, the government has ordered that the country's 30 national parks be open to the public. In fact, the feast celebrations are extremely unique in Egypt, as families go to pray in the morning and after they slaughter a sheep or a cow before going to national parks with their families to enjoy their breakfast meals.
بتقع دولة صغيرة على جزيرة مساحتها 719 كيلومتر مربع، وعدد سكانها حوالي 6 مليون نسمة. ورغم محدودية مواردها إلا أنها قدرت تكون رابع أهم مركز مالي في العالم، وتشارك بدور موقعها الجغرافي الفريد في منظومة التجارة العالمية واللوجستيات ما يقلش أهمية عن دور بنما ومصر. سنغافورة أدركت أهمية استثمار موقعها البحري وموانيها الملاحية وجهزتها باللوجستيات وسلاسل الإمداد الحديثة علشان تقدم الخدمات المتكاملة للحاويات اللي تلبي احتياجات حركة التجارة العالمية وتحقق لها أقصى عائد ممكن. وبالفعل استعادت الدولة دورها التاريخي في الربط بين التجارة الدولية من آسيا وأستراليا لأوروبا، وأصبح لميناء سنغافورة دور مهم في اقتصادها، وبقى بيقوم بأكبر وأسرع عمليات نقل ملاحي عابر في العالم، وبيحتل المرتبة الثانية بين أكبر مواني الحاويات عالمياً. ومن هنا أدركت مصر أن موقعها الرابط بين آسيا وأفريقيا ووجود قناة السويس فيها مش كفاية لتحقيق التنمية الاقتصادية اللي بتطمح ليها، وقررت تحول مواني قناة السويس من دورها التقليدي كنقط مرور فقط لمراكز لوجستية وتضيف ليها خدمات جديدة. وأطلق الرئيس عبدالفتاح السيسي في نوفمبر 2015 مشروعات المنطقة الاقتصادية لقناة السويس، وكان الهدف هو تحويل مصر لمركز لوجستي عالمي بالاستفادة من المزايا التنافسية للقناة بعد افتتاح قناة السويس الجديدة، وتكامل إقليم القناة من النواحي الاقتصادية والعمرانية والبيئية، بالإضافة لتشجيع الصناعات التصديرية، وربط محور قناة السويس بسيناء كهدف استراتيجي، وتنفيذ مشروعات تنموية فيها تحسن مستوى معيشة المواطنين وتوفر فرص عمل جديدة. وبالفعل وبعد سنتين بس اتحقق الحلم بإنشاء 6 مواني بحرية متطورة. هي غرب بورسعيد، شرق بورسعيد، العريش، الأدبية، السخنة والطور. بتدعمها 4 مناطق صناعية لجذب الاستثمارات، بالإضافة لمشروعات تانية عملاقة، منها إنشاء مزارع سمكية وحفر 6 أنفاق تربط وادي النيل بسينا، ده غير مجموعة من محاور الطرق بطول القناة. حكى الزمان وعاد وزاد إن حضارة أي بلاد أساسها تجارب السابقين، وإحنا كمصريين فهمنا الدرس من غيرنا، حملنا الشعلة وحلمنا زي ما كانوا إحنا نكون.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and we're also joined here in the studio by Ms. Minatullah Abdulaziz, a U.S. Master's graduate. Ms. Abdulaziz, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Abdalhalim, first of all, the whole Muslim community around the world are actually celebrating Eid al-Adha. What does this Eid commemorate for all Muslims around the world?
Right. As a matter of fact, we have got 2 distinctive types of feasts or festivals, actually, that are to be held on an annual basis. The first is supposed to be the Lesser Bayram feast or festival, which is Eid al-Fitr, as it is to be actually propagated here, there, and everywhere. And the second is supposed to be, you know, the Greater Bayram or the Feast of Sacrifice, as they might call it, actually, in non-native speaking Arab entities and countries, actually. Well, concerning the first, let's have a very quick look on the Lesser Bayram feast that comes at the end of a long months, actually, about sometimes 22 days of fasting, commemorating and celebrating the ending of all these fasting days, and very much harsh, actually, I would say, throughout sometimes a very, severe periods of drought, as much as severe extreme sense of heat, actually. So the second type, which is supposed to be the Feast of Sacrifice or the Greater Bayram, that comes also at the culmination or the termination of the pilgrims' progress, actually, towards Mecca and the standing on the mountain of Arafat, which denotes and symbolizes actually the cancellation of the previous errors and the mistakes and the wrongdoings actually of previous years. It is supposed that among the Arabs and among the Muslims particularly, actually, that they would believe that standing on the mountain of Arafat after the lapse of all these glorious 9 days, actually, is supposed to be the most glorious day, actually, to be celebrated and commemorated, denoting the sort of sacrifice that has got something to do with the infrastructure of Islam as a sort of religion that is may go back, actually, to the original sacrifice of Prophet Ibrahim when he would receive at one night a revelation or a sort of, I wouldn't say dream, because, I mean, prophets are not supposed to receive dreams, but sense of visions and revisions, and sometimes revelation. To slaughter his own son Ismail, actually, and Ismail actually being his own dear and very much endeared as very much petted son, is supposed to be one of the most arduous tasks and the most harsh things that any Muslim or any father, no matter he or she, maybe, is supposed to do, actually, in his own familial life, actually. And once the whole thing is to be prepared, actually, for commemorating and for the consummation of the act and the order of Allah coming from above as the supreme coordinator of all our own actions in life, actually, he was preparing, actually, for the process of slaughtering Ismail, the most dear and the most petted one. And at the last minute, actually, he would reveal another or receive another revelation that would order him, actually, to sacrifice the sort of the act of slaughtering Ismail by, proposing sacrificing a little sheep. And during these days, actually, it became a symbol on the commemoration, actually, of the Muslims around the world, as the supreme coordinator of all our own actions in life, actually, he was preparing, actually, for the process of slaughtering Ismail, the most dear and the most petted one. And at the last minute, actually, he would reveal another or receive another revelation that would order him, actually, to sacrifice the sort of the act of slaughtering Ismail by, proposing sacrificing a little sheep. And during these days, actually, it became a symbol on the commemoration, actually, of the Muslims around the world, even in European countries, actually, that the act of slaughtering a certain sheep just by way of commemorating, actually, the suit of the sacrifice. Now then, the whole thing has got some, religious connotations and as much as moral aspects, and much the same way that to give us very much interesting ethical details and moral elements, actually. Well, let us, examine first the ethical detail that comes to be very much interesting. The fact that a prophet, actually, who would receive the commandments or the orders or the canons and the laws of Allah coming from above to him, actually, to put an end for the most dear ampulate and the most endeared, actually, thing that a man would possess in life is supposed to be done on the spot, without the least rejection, without the least denial. And this is at one side. At another, actually, the sort of obedience on the part of the little son, actually, would, succumb to the orders of the father as well. So much so that you can really find that the whole episode is very much symbolic of loyalty, obedience, as much as loving kindness. In the meantime, a certain dedication, actually, to the orders and the canons of Allah, in much the same way that the little son is very much obedient to the extent that he would pose in front of his own father, very much ready to be taken off, actually, to be slaughtered on the spot, despite the fact that, the sort of the position of life is supposed to be the most dear thing that a man would possess in this worldly life. And as such, we have got a large number of ethical details and very much interesting values, starting from the order as being dedicated from God, passing through Prophet Ibrahim, and then through, Ismail as the son. And in the meantime, the act of the interference of the part of God. See how kind our own God is, actually. The fact that he knows so much so, indeed, that the most valuable possession that a man will possess in this worldly life. And despite all that sort of extreme sense of kindness, the fact remains that he would obey, he would succumb, he would accept without reject.
Yes.
That sort of order, actually.
Yes. Well, Ms. Abdulaziz, now being or staying in the US for a while doing the master's degree, now how is the feast perceived by Muslims in the US? And maybe through that we can understand how people from the international community are perceiving such a big feast.
Well, it depends where in the US are you staying. For instance, I was staying in New York. So New York has a big Arab community. One of the main island that has a lot of Arab population is Queens, and there's a lot of mosques there. And by the day of Eid, we go there. The feast, we go and pray, and then we celebrate. We try to hang out together, just to feel any kind of home.
And do they actually do the whole slaughtering process?
Yeah, there is a lot of like Islamic halal butchers there. So yeah, it's almost the same thing. Just the family thing is different. Were you
actually spending the feast there, or do you actually come and visit? Do you get homesick?
Not really. I don't know. I don't want to recall it actually.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Abdalhalim, you've mentioned some aspects of celebrating this feast, which is slaughtering a sheep and really distributing the meat for around the neighborhoods. Now, do you feel that such a tradition is becoming less common nowadays with the price hikes, with everybody being really going through their own austerity measures?
Perhaps from an economic point of view, I mean, people nowadays, particularly this particular year, I would say, they are not very much interested, actually, of, getting such extensive, sheep or cattle or, cows and that sort of thing to be slaughtered on the day of the Eid, actually. But I would still, believe the fact that they would, accommodate and they would preserve the right of the act of slaughtering something, no matter how that sort of thing may be very much minimized, just by way of keeping to the rights of Islam. Apart from the economic prices, apart from the excessive mania around actually buying meat on that day particularly, actually, I would really say that something far from being economic, something from being very much realistic or materialistic, I would say. The inevitable glaring fact and very much kind sign actually of getting together, of the sense of belonging, of the social solidarity actually, of keeping an eye on the poor, on those deserted, and those who are in very much dire need actually for meat. Well, according to the highest prices and the dilemma actually of the excessiveness actually in the prices of all items and commodities, you can really find that very poor families and deserted ones indeed actually might not be very much, you know, in the habit of buying or even tasting or even flavoring a sort of a piece of a meat actually for the whole year round. And as such, here lies the problematic issue. It's a day in which, you know, the celebration and actually the act of belonging, the act of getting together actually, the act of sharing actually the poor, of getting into their own wilderness actually, of sharing their own extreme sense of alienation as much as isolation by sharing them actually. That soon have extreme poor existence by giving them meat, desserts, and very nice, interesting things that would turn their own days, the 4 days actually of the feast, into a glorious episode of happiness, I would say. No matter how, you know, bewildered, no matter how those people may be very much poor, I would really think that it's a sign on the part of Muslim actually, on looking on the other, sharing the other actually, even in his own desperate, you know, moment. With the other people, particularly the poor, it's a sense of getting together because, I mean, owing to the extreme sense of wilderness and the sense of isolation among the people and the problematic economic situations actually, people in all times seem to be quite physically alienated from each other. But from spiritual point of view, they are getting together actually. Nowadays, because of modern means of technology, an extreme sense of being very much living in ivory towers, they are very much keeping an eye on themselves, for themselves, by themselves. So it's a very interesting and very nice thing actually to find someone to knock at your own door on the day of the feast actually, in the early morning, immediately after doing the prayer actually in a communal aspect, to give meat, sweet, dessert, say hello, happy new Eid and that sort of thing. It's a sense of remembering, belonging, getting together as much as reminding oneself actually of one main fundamental fact at the end of the day, which is no matter how your own life may be very much prolonged, very much protracted, there seems to be the inevitable end that looms large actually. This is symbolized by the day of Arafat, or the mountain of Arafat. It's a whitish sort of a mountain actually. It's a sort of an inevitable rite and very much interesting detail in which all the Muslims actually doing the journey actually would have to stand on, believing that all the sins and the errors and the bad doings are to be cancelled actually. It looks as though that man would come out from the journey of the pilgrimage, particularly with the standing dressed in white actually, and what you might call al-ihram clothes actually, denoting simplicity, frankness, directness, as much as the clarity of the vision and the purity of the heart. It looks as though also actually that a Muslim, when he comes out from the mountain of Arafat, from geographical point of view, as much as spiritual point of view as well, very much free of sins, it's a remembrance and reminding actually of the act of the shrouded coffin in which Muslims actually are to be laid on and upon during their own eternal journey into the grave, free from all the sins, all the past doings actually. That's why all the Muslims believe that getting into the mountain of Arafat, standing on it, is an inevitable right, to the extent that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said at one time that pilgrimages Arafat, those pilgrims actually would do the sort of the rite of going to Mecca, of doing all the rites without visiting Arafat, would seem to be at the end of the day quite meaningless. As such, it seems to be an inevitable step, very much commemorating actually the sort of the journey of man towards the finalization, actually very much free of sin, very much purified, as much as the sort of the whitish mountain is, in much the same way that the sort of the cloth that is very much clear, very much purified. It looks as though that very much purified out of all the sins and the misdoings of the past life, actually, outside.
Well, Mr. Abdulaziz, now Muslims around the Arab world and all over the world, it's really a big deal for them. It's very important for them to do the annual Hajj, the annual pilgrimage. Now, is it revered the same way in the US?
For Muslims, yeah, but in the Muslim community.
Is it being encouraged?
Yeah, actually, and even like for the, especially for the Americans that they converted already to Islam, I believe I saw many Americans that they are very much interested in going and see practicing the Hajj and doing all this. It's for them, they are exploring a whole new world for them, and because it's coming from a really deep faith, because they converted to Islam, they choose to be Muslims. However, we were born Muslims, so for us it's part of our culture, part of our life. But for the Americans who converted to Islam, they really much like to go to and do Hajj and practice all this. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, I saw many people.
Well, this pilgrimage is actually also constitutes a very big economic source of a strong economy for Saudi Arabia. Do you feel that there's still a lot of more modernization that could be done? Because quite recently, over the past few years, there was a lot of facilitations that have been taking place in Saudi Arabia for the annual pilgrimage. Do you feel that there still could be more done there?
Unfortunately for Muslims, I mean Egyptians, the visa process, it's kind of awful actually. So I don't want to go too deep with the politics, like the Saudi politics, but I saw it with my own eyes. In the US, for Americans or even like Egyptian Americans people, it's very easy for them to have a visa to Saudi Arabia for Hajj, and it's less expensive comparing to the price here in Egypt. Yeah, definitely there is a lot of progress, you can tell, but this progress, it's for people that they can go. But the people that they don't have the visa and go and they really want to go, and this is part of their dreams, kind of, and it's a huge part in the religion.
Yes.
So this is a problem, I think.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Abdulhalim, it is one of the main pillars of Islam, the pilgrimage. How do you see the facilitation and how Saudi Arabia is actually dealing with it and encouraging Muslims from all around the world to perform the annual Hajj?
Right. It's supposed to be the fifth, dimension of Islam. It's a must, actually, for a Muslim. How possesses, I wouldn't say extreme sense of money and valuable things, but how would really afford the issue of traveling there, the price of the tickets fare, and how would reach to a certain age in which he can really assume and act and react during the course of the Hajj or the pilgrim journey, because it's a very much arduous journey. Actually, it's not as such an easy task as other people might imagine it to be. It needs strength, extreme sense of energetic, as much as powerful, abilities actually to deal with revolving around the Kaaba, the going from the Marwa to Safa and vice versa, etc., etc. That's why, concerning the Egyptian authorities, they are paying extreme sense of efforts by providing those pilgrims with dua or with, instructors and those religious, I would say, tutors who would help all these pilgrims who are supposed to be doing that sort of journey for the first time in life. And as such, they are dedicating them as much as instructing them and educating them actually into the ways of doing the right Hajj, of instructing them into right path, as much as checking them from medical point of view, just by way of preserving their own health, either from getting a contamination, illness, or actually transmitting a sort of illness or a disease for the other people. The place in which all the pilgrims are running, are performing all the rites with enthusiasm, with great deal of efforts actually. And as such, they are to be in very much contagious existence to each other. As such, each single individual figure doing the Hajj journey or the pilgrim should be intact, very much free from all the illnesses and all the diseases actually, to the extent that they may check him or her in here before getting into the airport, Cairo International Airport, and then getting into the Saudi territories by performing a suit of medical health, medical check, in much same way that they are providing the airports and the residences of the pilgrims, actually with a large number of ambulances, as much as doctors and physicians and healthcare, as much as those are very much highly trained on to dealing with casualties, actually. This is one of the highest achievements, actually, that Saudi Arabia, as a kingdom, would be paying tribute to, much the same way that they are, spreading victory. Heat, actually, in Saudi Arabia, a large number of pilgrims would fall down, either dead or exhausted out, actually, of the drought and of being, very much exhausted to the extent that they might not be able, actually, to continue that sort of arduous task or harsh journey, I would say, and insist on saying so. And as such, I think that both Saudi Arabia, as much as the concerned authorities and each single individual country, are very much collaborating with each other by way of consummating a sort of a very much successful, as much as securing the pilgrims, because it seems to be at times very much risky, actually, as it might have been in there for quite some time, actually, by the attack of the Iranians or the pilgrims, and as such, you would have to secure the border lines, safeguard all your own territories, in much the same way providing the medical ambulances and efforts, as much as providing the sites of the pilgrims with highly trained doctors and surgeons, just by way of taking care, actually, of their own health during the course of that sort of journey, I would say.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Eid al-Adha, or the Feast of Sacrifice, it's really about sacrifice and actually obeying the command of God. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
Eid al-Adha, or the Feast of Sacrifice, is one of the holiest celebrations in Islam and marks the end of the Hajj, the annual pilgrimage to the holy city of Mecca in Saudi Arabia, which must be undertaken once in a lifetime, all physically and financially capable Muslims. Like other Islamic celebrations, Eid al-Adha by the lunar calendar and always begins on the 10th day of Dhul Hijjah, known as Arafat Day, or the climax of the annual Hajj pilgrimage period. In the Gregorian system, the date can vary over a period of 11 days. During the Hajj, Muslims remember and commemorate the rituals and triumphs of the Prophet Ibrahim. One of Ibrahim's main trials was to face the command of Allah to kill his only son. Upon hearing this command, he prepared to submit to Allah's will. When he was all prepared, Allah revealed to him that this sacrifice had already He had shown his love for the Lord surpassed all others, that he would lay down his own life or the lives of those dear to him in order to submit to God. During the celebration of Eid al-Adha, Muslims commemorate and remember these trials by themselves slaughtering an animal. The act symbolizes the willingness to give up things that are of benefit or close to our hearts in order to follow Allah's commandments. It is very important to understand that the sacrifice itself has nothing to do with atoning for our sins or using the blood to wash ourselves from sin. The ritual of tawaf involves walking 7 times counterclockwise around the Kaaba. The completion of tawaf is followed by 2 rak'at prayers at the place of Ibrahim near the Kaaba on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah. Later, pilgrims proceed to Mina, where they spend the whole day before heading to Mount Arafat. The 9th Dhul Hijjah is known as the day of Arafah, where they stand in contemplative vigil. They offer supplications, repent and atone for their past sins, seeking mercy from God. They also listen to a sermon from the Islamic scholars who deliver it from near Jabal al-Rahma, or the Mount of Mercy, where the Prophet Muhammad is said to have delivered his last sermon. Pilgrims must leave Arafat for Muzdalifah, where they perform Maghrib and Isha prayers jointly, spend the night praying and sleeping on the ground with open sky, and gather pebbles for the next day's ritual of stoning the devil. Then the pilgrims spend the night at Min, where they perform the symbolic stoning of the devil by throwing 7 stones at only the largest of the 3 pillars, known as Jamrat al-Aqaba, from sunrise to sunset.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, continuing our discussion for Eid al-Adha. Now, Ms. Abdulaziz, now, as Dr. Abdalhalim mentioned, it is usually overcrowded during the pilgrimage and there tends to be a lot of accidents. However, there were a lot of safety measures that have been undertaken in Saudi Arabia for the pilgrimage, but still a lot of accidents happen, whether it's because of the weather or the overcrowdedness or the stampede. Why do you think these accidents still happen, and what can actually be done to eliminate any of them?
Actually, I believe it's an amazing crowd. All these people, they are at the same place at the same time, and comparing to the population and the number of people that they are there, these accidents are not the huge number. I feel like that. It's not a big problem because they are doing the same thing at the same time, at the same place. So it's very well organized. That this is what I believe. Like, I believe it's not. It's well organized.
Yes. Well, Dr. Abdalhalim, it seems that the numbers are growing for the pilgrimage every year, even though there are a lot of political difficulties and political and economic developments happening around the Arab world and the whole world, actually. Do you feel that it can have any sort of effect? Do you think it actually affects the numbers, maybe increases the numbers of people going and performing the pilgrimage, or the other way around?
No, despite the extreme sense of hardships and the economic instabilities, actually, and the maximization and the prices of almost the prices of tickets, of travel tickets, I would say, the exceeding number of pilgrims and those who are insisting on doing the sort of the journey, is maximized every now and again throughout years, because, as I've just said at the very beginning of the episode, the sort of a must that one would do actually during a lifetime. I really believe that if a man is in vast possession of a large number of money, of vast fortunes, possessing all the abilities and all the potentialities and the capacities, physical, mental, spiritual, as much as financial, of doing that sort of journey, and would abstain from doing it, I think that he's a sinner. He's to be interpreted as a sinner in the eyes of God as much as in the eyes of the social community around him. So it's a must for almost single individual Muslim. It's a sort of an aspiration, if not a sort of a dream that he's dreaming of every now and again. That's why, despite the fact that difficulties are very much maximized every now and again, prices are very much, getting a bit higher, but it's a must, as I've just said, that a Muslim would do. Because, if you go into the teachings and the followings of Islam, you find that it's a sort of a memorable day. It's a sort of an everlasting place in which a Muslim would visit Mecca, which is supposed to be the Kaaba, or the direction of all Muslims here there, and no matter how, in one belief, which is one God, as much as the Christians would believe, just one place, as much as one Qibla, or one direction, actually. And in the meantime, within the same time, within the same place, you can find a large abundance, actually, very much large, maximal, indeed, of numbers, and numbers growing every now and again, of pilgrims, apart from and despite all the hardships and difficulties that they are insisting of doing so, to the extent that they may borrow, actually, vast amounts of money, just by way of saving their own lives from eternal tribulations and final disastrous endings. Because I've just said also that it's a sort of a journey in which a man or a woman would go out of its own ending, actually, back again to his own homeland or birthplace, very much free from all the sins and the crimes, very much innocent as much.
Yes. Well, Ms. Abdulaziz, now, there are two faces, two sides of this. And the economic difficulties that any family can be going through, but at the same time, and really invest in the economy as a whole. How do you actually can find and hit that sort of balance between both?
Between Depends. Each person has his own budget, her own budget. It depends on their standards of living. I don't know. It's very personal. Everyone has the budget for it, and it's priorities. It depends on their priorities. To keep the balance, well, if I cannot afford going to Hajj, very personal.
Yes.
I guess.
Well, as you've mentioned, there is another way around it, which is people actually donating money, doing a lot of charity work. Does that mean that it can sort of balance itself out, that within the economic status of each and every family, does it balance itself out that people can actually engage in charity work, can actually donate money and effort?
Yeah, I believe the main aim of Islam, generally speaking, it's helping each other, and the feast is it's all about celebration and happiness and spreading happiness all around everywhere you go. And yeah, if someone cannot afford going to Hajj, he will be happy to help someone else or makes anyone else around him happy by giving meat, for instance, because this is the main thing of Eid is like gathering with the family, gather together and eat and have the fatta. I don't know how to.
Yeah. It's a very important Egyptian dish. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, it's the main dish for the for which is rice and lamb and all this delicious stuff. Yeah, I'm getting hungry.
We're getting hungry. Yes, Dr. Abdulhalim, do you feel that celebrating the feast has actually changed throughout the years? Is it different now than it was a few years ago?
Well, I wouldn't say so. Same signs and gestures as much as memorable celebrating attitudes and actions on the part of the grown-ups as much as the youngsters as well, actually. The youngsters have got, or the young people, or the young generation have got their own ways and means. So which they would celebrate with balloons, with, you know, I mean, bombs and that sort of fascinating tricks, actually, that they would spread here, there, and everywhere. In much the same way that the elderly people are very much in the habit of, you know, I mean, visiting each other, giving the sort of donation or the idea actually to be given actually to the youngsters, as much as the sort of the sense of belonging and the commemoration of bringing the disparate parts of families together. It's a sort of a tradition in which you can really find a large number of families that are to be scattered here, there, and everywhere on different parts of cities and countries and areas and villages, actually, would, you know, I mean, collaborate with each other just to sit and have a nice dish or a nice meal, actually. Apart from the bringing those distant parts of families together at that particular day, we have got one memorable fact that you'd have to remember every now and again, which is very much political, because in our own daily debate, we are in the habit, actually, of discussing every now and again diplomatic issues and very much political details, actually. I think that the pilgrimage of the Hajj, during the course of the Greater Bayram, or the Feast of Sacrifice, has got something political around it, about it, actually, which is the sort of bringing a large number of people from different parts of countries here, there, and everywhere, that they are to be very much collaborated. It's a sign or an invitation on the part of Allah, of God's, for all the people, for all the humanity, actually to be unified as one unified whole, actually. And I think that Mr. Fattah Sisi is insisting every now and again, actually, on you know, consummating a sort of one unified Arab force that would seem to be the nearest approach to 5+1, the BRICS and the NATO. You know, it's a sort of an ally on the part of all Muslims from all scattered parts and countries. You know, here, sometimes there. To be one unified, it's a sort of an obedience, it's a sort of a dedication on the part of Allah. It's an order on the part of God, actually, for all the Muslims to be unified ummah or unified nation in face of the external invasions and conquering attacks of other parts of other European countries. And I think this is a highest political aim, in much the same way that it induces all people actually to be one unified entity. Well, I still remember the little you know, story on the part of an old man, very much sagacious, very much gracious man, when he, you know, I mean, gathered all his own youngsters, asking each single individual son to try to break a sort of a stick, actually, individually. and then all together, each single individual one would fail actually to break the stick. In much the same way that when they are to be collaborated together, they would be able, in a position actually to cut the stick. So unification is a sort of an ordinance on the part of God. You would have to be very much unified, and we can really take advantage of the season or the festival or the celebration of the pilgrimage for all the Arab Ummah, for all the Muslim Ummah, for all the Arab countries actually, to be one unified entity actually in face of all other invasions on the part of all other Western countries. We do have possess the power and the strength actually to be unified. So, and I think that day is very much social, religious, ethical, in much the same way that it seems to be also possessing its political connotations, I would say.
Well, do you feel, Ms. Abdulaziz, that it could actually, the spirit, this festive and a religious and tolerant spirit of the feast, can it actually spill onto the political life, the political spectrum? Can it actually affect the Arab states and the Arab unities and really prompt progress within the political spectrum?
Well, hopefully it will help. I mean, comparing to, if you compare the Arab nation, comparing to the European Union, for instance, we have a lot of common things together. We have a religion that unite us, and the language, we all speak Arabic, and so we have a lot of things that we can reunite with it. But the religion, yeah, definitely al-Hajj, it can like be a way to meet people from different cultures, that they come together, and maybe they reach to the point that we are all the same, so maybe we can have the same aim at the end of the day. And yeah, it can affect definitely the political views.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully this feast that is celebrated around the Muslim world would actually be having actually a very positive effect on the political life. Now, Dr. Abdalhalim, going back to the pilgrimage and the Hajj, how far can making all the necessary arrangements in Saudi Arabia actually prompt a lot of economic prowess within the country that could actually balance any sort of difficulties they are facing within the oil industry, and also maybe dealing with the whole Yemeni crisis? I don't want to turn it into a very political thing, but how can actually Saudi Arabia use such a very important event to its own favor that would spill over economically and politically?
Right. Well, I think that Saudi Kingdom and the authorities in there may be very much concerned actually of maximizing the prices on the tickets and on the pilgrimage as a journey and the tariffs of each single individual pilgrims in there. And this is due actually to the Houthi rebels' attacks on the borderlines of Saudi Arabia. And I think that Saudi Kingdom is passing through a large number of tribulations and problematic situations, particularly the large number of millions and millions that are to be paid on a daily basis actually for safeguarding the borderlines, to the extent that, as you remember, that Donald Trump, about a couple of months ago was threatening Saudi Arabia actually of withdrawing from Syria. And when the Saudi Kingdom authority would insist, and the Crown Prince would insist on the stoppage actually of the American pieces in there, he was very much forward actually in telling them that you would have to pay for our own stay in here. So it's a sort of give and take dialogue that is to be echoed actually in terms of interpreting each single individual step in terms of money. Each single individual day that passes through the Saudi Kingdom is to be endorsed with an extreme amount of money and very much valuable dear souls that are to be actually paid on a daily basis. And as such, they would have to be very much careful actually of safeguarding the borderlines, of protecting the pilgrims, and of safeguarding all these borderlines in which they are very much sharing the Yemeni Houthi rebels actually at the Yemeni borderlines. And in the meantime, take each single individual simple chance of paying actually for safeguarding their own borderlines as much as facilitating the issues and the facilitations in general, medical, spiritual, ethical, moral, as much as an accommodation as well for all the pilgrims. Well, I think that one main fundamental issue also that we would have to be very much careful is the fact that, you know, in the world of politics, survival is not as it used to be for the strongest or for the fattest, actually, for the richest, for the most powerful, for the loudest in voice, actually, because we tend to say that in all days, survival is for the fittest, for those figures and those countries are supposed to be fit, fair, straightforward, direct, as much as directing all their own episodes with extreme sense of peace, far from being so nowadays, actually. In modern times, in modern technological aspects, actually, of nowadays, I think that survival, actually, is for the strongest, for the loudest in voice, and for the richest. And I think that's why Saudi Arabia, actually, is paying a very great deal of tribute, actually, towards maximizing the prices of almost each single individual action that would pass during the day of those pilgrims, actually.
Yes.
That should be directed and very much a channel towards, I think, their own materialistic ends, and this seems to be quite very much ordinary in way of politics, I would say.
Yes. Well, Ms. Abdulaziz, with all the developments that are taking place politically in Saudi Arabia, do you feel that it can actually affect the pilgrimage, the whole pilgrimage event and process in the country?
Well, actually, I've never lived in Saudi Arabia, so I really don't know. But it depends. I mean, what I can tell from the new the prince, the new prince of Saudi Arabia, he's taking the country to a very diverse and open country. For instance, they let the women drive, and so I believe this whole thing's changing a lot of the country vision, I would say. So yeah, probably it will change the country to it will get the country to another new place, which is, I believe, it's a good place.
You think it will attract more people to actually perform the pilgrimage, more people to visit the country?
Definitely, and I think also it will encourage a lot of people, even the people that they are not Muslim, they maybe will be curious to know about this religion, about Islam. They would like to read and see how peaceful it is. So maybe it will encourage definitely other people from different cultures. Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully it will definitely have a positive effect on the Saudi Arabia, on Egypt, on the entire Islamic and Arab world. Ladies and gentlemen, we definitely wish you a very happy and festive Eid al-Adha, the Feast of Sacrifice. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. Before we go, I'd like to thank our very distinguished guest, Ms. Minnatallah Abdulaziz, a U.S. Master's graduate. I'd also like to thank very much Dr. Muhammad Abdalhalim, the political analyst. Thank you very much for joining us on this very special day.
Thank you for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Nile International. I'm Henny Saif. Thank you for joining us.